Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening, but they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping their...
I had a friend of mine that I knew from Perkins. In 1990, when they opened the school, invited me down. And trusted him, met Professor Smith. Had no money, couldn't start. But I told him when I had money, I would come. And it took about 3 years for me to get here. So, because of Craig Briscoe, who was Professor Smith's first black belt, wish I could find him, let him know what an impact that invitation made.
Mm-hmm. And so how old were you when you got started?
I was 35. I was just at the upper level. You can't, Kung Fu, you can't start until you're 18, and you can't start after 35. So I was right at 35. Mm-hmm. So I was the old man. I think my hair was already starting to go gray.
So when you started, did you have a certain goal in mind that you wanted to achieve, or what is it that really made you want to do it?
Well, initially, I just wanted to do it. I didn't know what was entailed. In fact, I even asked Greg Briscoe at the time, he wasn't a black belt yet, if Professor Smith would let me get on the mat with him and just see what I had versus what he had. He talked me out of it, and after about the second class, I realized he saved my life, which was a good thing. I didn't really have any expectations. I just wanted to basically give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. You were very successful in baseball, right?
Okay. I did okay,
mm-hmm.
Not complaining.
And so do you feel like those skills that you had in baseball helped you with what you were going to do in martial arts?
Not initially. I mean, most, quote, athletes, people, and I could do just about anything, but martial arts was just totally Greek to me. It was like changing my hands and my feet and putting ballet slippers on a fullback. I mean, just not natural. Baseball, basketball, track, anything else I want to do, no problem. Not martial arts. And I think after about the third class, that's when I realized I can't quit this because I can't let this beat me. So the correlation between baseball and other sports didn't really come into play until probably 6-7 years later after I got my black belt. Then I could kind of assimilate them. So it just took a while. But that's what they teach you down here, how to take what you learn here and apply it at other parts of your life. And
so when things got difficult or were difficult, what is it that inspired you to keep going?
I think it's just personal. I don't like to lose. And it's not always about winning, but I don't want to quit something just because I can't get it. I just was not going to let this thing beat me. Most of the students have about 20 hours when they get their yellow belt. I had 53. I couldn't get just the basics down. I was too rigid, tried too hard, too tight, too tense. Everything else was just, let's go, not martial arts. So the good thing is now when I see somebody come through that's just not picking it up naturally, I can totally relate to them. But I can also teach them.
Do you feel like you had certain instructors that were more helpful for you or that really inspired you the most?
Well, you always compare yourself to those in front of you. I don't care what it is. If you own a business, somebody else, I know Mason's looking at Maverick, he'll compare what he does versus what I do, and you hope he exceeds him. Sensei Briscoe he had a second-degree black belt in Taekwondo when he came in. Was just so fluid. Professor Smith, so fluid. But I had a support system of guys, Professor Dixon now, always just followed Sensei Patterson, who actually got his black belt right after me, weighed about 400 pounds, but he was very thick. And I was very rigid, so they'd put me with him a lot of times because he had cushion. And I could block where the blocks are supposed to be soft, mine were hard, didn't hurt him. So the unique thing about this school, I think, more than anything else, is Professor Smith has the knowledge of how to teach. And he was taught by his instructor, but it's not, everybody's different. I mean, when I was the 5th black belt down here, and you had 4 black belts before me that were totally different fighters. And his job is not to become him. His job is to make you the best you can be. And, you know, some are great kickers. I was faster with my hands. Doesn't mean I can't kick, just... So I think just having the guys, Professor Dixon, probably more with Professor Smith, Sensei Briscoe left probably when I was about halfway to black belt. If I had to credit, other than Professor Smith, of course, be Professor Dixon. He always just showed me the road. So I knew what was coming. Didn't always like what I was going to get, but he showed me the road. So those two, Professor Smith, Professor Dixon, Sensei Smith, his daughter, just good. Anyway.
Well, that answers my next question possibly. Is there a lot of camaraderie?
You know, it's different. I think anytime you've battled anything, I don't care if it's a sickness or if it's a business or you've been through the trenches, you know, with certain people, I think it's, you get that bond. You know, I understand the military guys more than what I do, the police officers more than what I do. These guys are risking their lives, and they have that camaraderie. They can look at each other and just know. We do that here on a limited scale. Not to belittle what we do here, but they just do it a little different. So, you know, there are people now that I know I can make a phone call, and it doesn't really matter what I need. I just would go, or they would go. They would come to me if I needed them. They know I would come to them. They don't need to explain why. So that camaraderie, and it was real evident when Professor Dixon got sick. I don't know. He was in the ICU, and there was pretty much the nurses knew that the visiting hours didn't apply to us. And we weren't going to disrupt anything, but we're there for him. And there's not much they're going to do. And they kind of knew it. We didn't have to say it, didn't have to flaunt it. But you've got, at one point, Professor Smith, myself, Sifu, Professor Solano, Sensei Green, Sifu Ryan were gathered. I mean, these are the guys, the core group of guys were gathered around, helpless. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the bunch, a dry eye. I mean, they were just genuinely concerned for this man. Some of them had been in school for years. But somebody rang the bell, somebody blew the horn, one of us was in trouble. They showed up. Makes you feel good.
So that sounds like it's as much as, or even more important than the skill set that you've learned.
Everybody has skills. I don't care what it is. Everybody does something good. Even the ones that think I can't do anything well, they can do something well. We just do this well, hopefully. And we kind of have different standards than a lot of people. But everybody does something well. And it's not so much the skills you learn, it's what you do with them. I can tell you probably, you can go through our black belt list in there and name one person in there that's been in a physical fight I've not heard of any. So it's not necessarily the skills that you have, it's the training on how to use the skills you have, but it's also the discipline knowing when not to use the skills that you have. And there have been times where you just want to go, you know, this guy's a jerk, I just want to trace him in chalk. And you know you're going to have to call Professor Smith and tell him what happened. Don't want to make that phone call. So, but I think, you know, if you put it all on a scale, life lessons versus skill lessons, you know, I think you learn, when you learn to associate with what you've learned here at Smith Institute versus how you can apply that to your personal life, to your business life, it's probably a good 70-30 more in the life skill type of things. You know, eventually we're going to hang up our belts and we're going to hang up. We'll never not be able to protect our family and friends. We'll always be that. A man loses his teeth doesn't mean he stops eating. Been told that 100 times. Maybe not going to kick him to the head, but you're going to do something. And we're going to hang that up eventually. But the skills that you've learned here that you pass on to your kids, to their kids, I don't think Professor Smith really gets what he's done. Wish he did, but he's too humble. But I think the life skills you learn here are more important, are just as important. I own a business. I'm not afraid of confrontation. Don't like it, not afraid of it.
Because of what you learned here?
Well, you know here that at the end of the day, you're going to be okay. You know, we've been taught things to protect ourselves. And it's always Professor Smith, if you'd go to a tournament, and that's a judging event where you've got judges judging you. You don't always win, even though you felt like you win, but you don't always win. Because those judges have opinions. And Professor Smith will just ask you, if you met that man on the street, and if it was no judges, would you survive? Would you win? And if you can answer yes, good. And that's the point. So if you know going into battle, whether it's physical or business, that at the end of the day, you're going to be okay, and there's no fear of getting hurt, then it's just a game. It's a challenge. And you want to win. And when you're fighting somebody with what we've been taught here, you know you're going to protect yourself, and you'll trade punches with them. Theirs will be fine. I mean, that's not going to hurt, but you're going to be able to handle it, or you're going to prepare for it, but you're going to win. And it's kind of like gambling. You know, it's kind of like if you know the answer before they ask the question, you're going to get it right. And we've been taught the answer. And now you can take that over to business. Long answer, but that's just one example of what we do here.
So you mentioned tournaments. I see a lot of trophies around the school. Do you still have your trophies?
Kind of knew that would come up. Personally, once my son was born, they didn't mean as much.
Why is that?
When I came home from a tournament, he was born on a Tuesday. I came home from a tournament on a Saturday, and I'd won 3 first place medals. And I was going to put him on his chest. My wife met me at the door, said that he was okay. I'm going, what do you mean? The nurses were here, what's wrong? He had jaundice. Brand new babies get that. So once I heard that, I'm okay. But I'm thinking something's wrong with my son, and I was going to beat my chest and show what his daddy did. So I walked over and had my little brag wall corner of all my stuff that says how good I am, all my sales awards, whatever. Put those trophy or medals on the edge of the desk, went and looked at him and made sure he was okay. Well, we moved a year and a half later. And when I picked those medals up off the desk, there was dust around them. all those awards and trophies didn't quite mean as much. So they were in boxes in the basement and wherever. But as Mason grew, I'd still compete. And didn't always win first place, but did okay. And I would come home and Mason would put on his karate uniform, I'd put mine back on, and he learned to face each other, bow. You fight hard. When you get done, you bow, you shake hands, you hug, we're done. Winner gets the trophy. And it was a few years, probably about 15, I think, and walked upstairs and I looked in the guest room and there's all these trophies and ribbons. And they were in Mason's room. And I asked him what he was doing. He goes, well, I'm just going to want to rearrange my room a little bit. I said, do you want me to get rid of these trophies? He goes, no, just keep them downstairs. Well, I counted them up and I think there were 19 trophies or ribbons or awards that he and I had fought for. So winning the trophies, and this place has got a ton of them. I think I've got one in there that I just gave back, just to put it on display. But that's okay. I mean, that's what students do, they pay back. But looking at those awards, knowing that I fought my son 19 times. And I never won. But I had 19 battles with my son, and we'd get done, we'd shake hands, we'd hug, and he'd go, thank you, Daddy. To see him walk to his room with pride, with his trophy, already had a spot picked out where it was going to go. And we were done. But that was just, but if he didn't kick hard enough, if he didn't, he earned them. But to be able to look back and go, wow, that was quick. So I think I understand a little bit when the Bible talks about we get to heaven, we can lay our trophies down. Yeah, I earned it. Big deal. I didn't really earn them. You know what I mean? I mean, I just, I don't have any problem giving them up. So I really get that in a physical way. So anyway, what was the question originally?
You answered it. It was
Okay.
about if you still have your trophies. Well, so I know that protecting your family is extremely important for you. When do you feel like along in training you really felt like you were confident with this new set of skills that you could walk down the street with your family anywhere and know that they would be okay and you could use what you had?
I think as husbands, fathers, you always have that built-in fighter in you when it comes to your family. There's, you love like a mother, you kill like a father. Sometimes you love like a father, you kill like a mother. The mother hen syndrome. There's and I try to tell people all the time, the most dangerous place in the world is that spot between a mother and her child. I don't care what I know. I think it really came down to doing street defense. We do a lot of scenarios here. When my son was about 4 years old, so I'd been training, maybe 97. He was born, so 90, I've been training 8 or 9 years. And I always kind of knew that I was going to protect him. But we're doing street defense one day, and it's a scenario where you turn and face the wall and you turn around and you're walking down the street, and Professor Smith would send out attackers or people to find out, try to get in on you. And it's a drill we do down here to practice what could happen out there. And I did okay with street defense until one day he took my son and put him next to me. And he told me, if they touch him, I lose. Well, your adrenaline internally goes from 10 to 120. And I remember turning around and there were 3 people that were coming. And we got down the street. There was no way they were going to touch my son. And it was a different mindset. And that one act of putting my son next to me probably taught me more of the place I needed to go if I have to go. And we say at the end of class, we pray we never have to use what we know. But there's that place where you go that you just know this is what you're going to need to succeed. And that one drill showed me that place, showed me how to get there, showed me how to get out. So I teach a lot of street defense, and it's because I was given the gift by Professor Smith, knowing what it really means. So to answer your question, I think since he was born, I probably felt okay, totally 100% confident, probably 7-8 years into this, probably between my first and second degree black belt.
So there are a lot of people that come for a while and don't get to the point where you got and are able to receive all that you've just talked about. Why do you think that happens?
They don't get to receive all I just talked about. And I don't mean this arrogantly or pridefully. You earn the right to learn here. You pay your dues. And if you're worthy, Professor Smith will give it to you. But he can take it away too if we go a little rogue, which I've seen happen, which is kind of neat. He's taught me how to do it a little bit, and I'm going, I hope I don't have to do that. But to get a black belt here is very difficult. There are standards that we have to every rank. You know, that's what's neat when the kids come in and they earn their rank. They earned it. It's not because who their parents are, not because where they grow up or live, or you know, if they're black, white, doesn't matter. They earn it. And that's the other part. When you come here, you're not black, white, green, orange. You're a yellow belt, white belt, black belt. That's who you are. But when you get your black belt, it's kind of like graduating high school. Okay, you basically mastered your basics. Now it's time to go to college. This is when you learn to use and apply what you have. Just because somebody can do a certain kick or a certain technique doesn't mean they know how to use it. I can hand a baby a knife and fork. They don't know what to do with it. They can put it in their hands, so they're holding the knife and fork. How do you use it? When to use it? That's what's taught later on. And if you look at the black belt list after, you know, I mean, shoot, we've been down here almost 30 years, you know, and you have 34, 35 black belts. And then you look around to see we have, you know, a handful of second degree black belts. We have 3 people that have master rank here. Out of the hundreds in 30 years, you have 3. That's 1 every 10 years masters it. Mastering it just means you know how to use the tools you have. It's like wisdom. Wisdom is knowing how to use the knowledge you have. Here, mastering is knowing how and when to use the tools you have. And little things make a world of difference. So the people that come through, they get their money's worth and not held back from that standpoint. Fine-tuned is reserved for those who pay the price and earn the price.
When did you become an instructor? When did you officially start teaching and training? And
I started in, it's ironic, you ask any black belt here pretty much when their first day was and when their day they got their black belt, they'll tell you. I started training 8/3/93 and got my black belt 9/29/99. So it took a little over 6 years. Doesn't take everybody that long, I'm a little slower, it's okay. I still got it. You're taught to teach all the way up as you, and it's the same here, as you advance in knowledge, you help those advance in knowledge. So you're always teaching as you come up, but officially once you become a black belt, you're quote an instructor. Until master rank or higher rank comes on the floor, and then you go back to being a chump, which is fine. But I think in '99 is when I started, I think when you stand up in front of the class, because you up and then, till then you stand in line. Once you get your black belt, you're in front of the class. But by then you're already taught how to teach. Brown belts, when they start really focusing, they'll turn the class over to you, watch you, tweak you. So, you know, these students here are kind of like kids to Professor Smith. He's not going to turn his kids over to you unless you're qualified. Kind of like I've had people say, this is my child, you're not going to get him until you earn, until I watch, and then they say, okay, I trust you, but I'm going to be right here. And you make the promise that you're going to bring him back. And Professor Smith doesn't turn his kids over to somebody that's not capable. He'll give them a little chance here and there, but he's right there. And now, at my rank, I'm right there too. You know, I can be walking around the floor, but your eyes are everywhere. And because you have a responsibility. So people don't get everything just by showing up or paying. And the long answer, the speed answer, I guess, is shorten this up. A customer pays you money and says, I want to learn this and this. A student gives you money and says, teach me what I need to know. And we have far more customers than we do students. Customers, though, pay the bills to keep the doors open so the students can learn. Without the customers, and it's not your call that says, I want to be a student. That's not your call. Professor Smith will tell you, or he'll tell me, so-and-so is a student, and he tells you once, and that's the end of it. When he says, this man, you know, so-and-so, he's a student. Yes, sir. That's when you start teaching them differently. That's when their promotions and advancements slow down. And that's when you have to call them aside and tell them, look, you've been deemed a student. Be patient. Your rank will come, but you're going to get this stuff that not everybody gets. So if it takes you longer to get a black belt, don't worry. You know, but we're going to teach you what you need to know. And it's an honor. It's a privilege. It's neat to sit there and go, wow, there's a student, you know, there's somebody, you know. We have a handful. And the customers and the students really only know if they've been deemed a student. Customers don't know the difference. The instructors know the difference. And it's all earned. Your attitude, your effort, your sincerity, your self-control, your etiquette makes you a student. And that's a good thing.
Do you have a favorite story or someone that you taught that really meant a lot to you to see the changes that it made in them?
Oh, probably a few. One in particular, you get to edit this, right? Okay. Mason, when we lived at the golf course, Mason had a friend named Jacob. No, not many kids around there. So Jacob was probably a couple years older than Mason. Jacob had autism. He was on the high side of autism. Certain things would set him off, and you knew it. Had his little quirks, which is fine. They left the golf course. We moved. here, kept in touch with him. His mom knew I did martial arts. I get a phone call one evening and asked if I could help Jacob with his karate he was taking. I said, I don't know, what style is he taking? And she didn't know either. And it was up in Clinton, and it was at the Y. And so I said, well, Mason and I will come up and watch a class. So I came up, watched the class, took a minute to identify what style it was. And I'm over there just taking little notes off to the side. And she goes, you think you can help him? I said, give me a call later, or let me call you later. Let me go home and think about this, because I don't want to start something you can't finish. So my wife's looking at me in the dining room and said, what are you doing? And I'm looking at my notes, and I said, well, if I end on 21, I can help Jacob. And so I called her up. I said, I can do this. I can help him. And he was a white belt, going to test for his yellow belt. So Mason and I, they had open gyms a couple days a week. So we made, for about a month, trips up to Bloomington, or I'm sorry, up to Clinton. And I'd work on Jacob's kata with him. And we'd do it about 5 times, and then let him and Mason play basketball for a minute, time to go back to work. And he was just really getting boogered up, had it down, just one way, turn the other way. And he got to hearing that. When he get to that, he'd start saying it. And so he knew, and I knew he was getting it. After about a month, he was testing the next day. Well, he had to break a board part of his test. I think he had to break a board, but it was his birthday. So I brought a couple boards with him, and I told him, here's how you stand, here's how you do this, and you're going to break this board. And when you break it tomorrow, you're going to do just fine, but you're going to break it the day first. And he broke his board. Mm-hmm. Here we sign him as witnesses. And if my name's on something, he did it. And I dated it. So the next day, probably about 7, 8 o'clock at night, the phone rings. And got a little 8-year-old boy going, Mr. Hinton, this is Jacob, stuttering a little bit. And I said, hey, how you doing? He goes, I'm a yellow belt. Ah, good for you. And talked to his mom a minute, put the phone down, probably cried like a little baby. Told his mom, I said, it's good that he's doing this. He needs to come down here with me. If they really cared about Jacob and martial arts, you need to get him in the right school. So Jacob came down, and they were pretty steady coming down. Well, I had 2 kids about the same age, and it was on the floor, and these boys were both testing for their black belts. And I'm judging. And I had to call timeout before they bowed in. And I had somebody else come and judge that ring. I knew I wanted Jacob to win. But Jacob needs to get his black belt because of Jacob, not because he knew the judge. So I recused myself. And I like both kids, don't get me wrong. I had them since they were little. I don't remember who won. That's fine, didn't care. Jacob got his black belt. And I have a picture of Jacob and I on this wall getting his black belt. But through the training, Jacob got out of, for the most part, his special ed classes and got more into normal classes. He's moved to Chicago, and his parents would drive him when there was a school in Bloomington with us. He would drive him down. That's a long way to train. But Jacob, they valued what we did. Jacob comes down and visits his grandfather in Clinton. Jacob drives. Jacob comes down. We bow to Jacob when he walks in the door. And to know that you influenced a parent that not just simply because of this, but this was one piece of the puzzle that Jacob needed to get to a normal life, which is what every parent really wants. And because somebody invited you way back when, you're able to affect somebody's life now. And Jacob's going to affect, because he's a good kid, going to affect other people. we can't minimalize the effect we have, good or bad, on people. But when Jacob comes in, I still remember as a little boy, we're down feeding the fish in the pond, making sure he didn't just jump in. And Mason getting excited when he's 3 or 4 because he gets to hang out with Jacob. To look at this young man now, that if you ask him if he's ever trained anywhere, he'll say yes at Smith Institute of Martial Arts, and his name's on that black belt list. That's a pretty cool thing.
It's a very cool thing.
That's one story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I have a few.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Smith has more.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think that the life lessons that you say you've learned here have helped you to be a better father, business owner?
I think as a father and as a business owner, you're always a little harder on yourself. And I knew I've probably not cursed my son, but I've hovered him, watched over him, stricter with him, because I know the dangers that are out there. But he's turned out so far a pretty good kid. He thinks I'm beating him and beating on, not physically, but harder on him. And I don't trust him so much. I trust him. I have a hard time with those around. So was I always the sweet, loving friend, dad? I'm a dad first. I'm going to do what I think is best for my child, period. Now, if that means loving them a little softer, that's how they raise theirs. This is how I raise mine. I'm going to give him every opportunity. So from a child growing up, probably me training here, not been easy on him. We've had talks, some more lately since he's gone away to college and moved out. And maybe I think he sees a little bit of what I've done and why I've done it. But I don't think he can ever doubt that I didn't love him. And that's the first thing you're supposed to do. And when you love them enough to make those decisions that maybe are a little harder than other parents do, I knew how I grew up, and I knew what's out there. I know what's out there. And I can't have that for my son. So a little stricter, a little firmer, a little more inquisitive, what he's doing, who he's hanging out with, what time he's coming home. We kept an eye on him. From a business standpoint, I work with my wife, which if you come to her office, it says Queen on her desk. I am a different man inside the business than I am outside the business. Not always proud of the way I am inside the business. But to justify that a little bit, if nobody else, maybe just to me, I'm a fighter. My business keeps my family indoors eating food. And I guard that business like I do my family, because that's our source of income. So I'm a little more intense at work than I am if I work for somebody else, that if this goes bad, I'm still going to get a paycheck. The people that work in my office work extremely hard, and I don't show them a lot how much I appreciate them. And I'm very quick to point out when things go bad, and I'm very slow to point out when things go good, but I expect them to go good all the time. So when we do something good, that's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. we do something bad, that's not us. That's not what we're supposed to do. And does it bother me? Yeah. I work hard for my customers. I work hard to get them. I work hard to keep them. And I think sometimes maybe the staff doesn't have to deliver something that's wrong and be the one in front of them because somebody back home messed up. And how you look at your customer and disappoint them, and when you want a clean slate, you want to keep these customers, you don't want to give them a reason to go shop anywhere else. And it's not personal, it's just the business. But this is my business, our business, family business. We've been very fortunate financially to do what we want to do when we want to do it, live where we want, drive where we want, go where we want. Everybody works hard for that in our company. But I think it comes down to, because of this training and know what responsibility you have, you're on a different level than maybe an hourly employee is. And I'm not always nice about it, and I understand that. But we've never missed a payment on anything. And I think being that locked in focus and not having an oh well attitude makes a difference. We're gonna mess up. We do too much to mess up. But we can't stop messing up. If we can't stop messing up, then we might as well shut the doors. And I don't know what else I can do to provide for my family. And if I had one thing that I've told them that I just really want them to know, is that I do love them. And that's why I'm a little more protective of this family business, because of the family. Because this is their past, their present, their future. And I have to guard it, and I'm going to watch it like a hawk. It's not that I don't love them. This is what keeps us eating food, sleeping indoors. And if I drive this business in the ground, I don't have anything to give my son. Go ahead. That's probably a long answer.
Well, so that leads me to the two last questions then.
Okay.
The first one being, obviously you've had a lot of support from home to allow you to come here and do what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they're proud, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and I think they trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know my wife does. We'll go to a movie and she goes, I see you doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they know that if something happens to them, it's because I'm dead. And I'm not afraid to die on a hill or for a cause, and that's a quick one to say I'm good to die for that one. You don't die for everything. But my family, my friends, the people around, if it's a battle needs fighting, I'll fight. I'm the guy with his hand in the air. But we were doing something one day here in class, and Mason was probably 8 or 9. And it was test day. Test days are, sometimes they'll let guests show up. And I'm testing. And part of my test for one of my black belts was knife defense. We do gun defense, we do club defense. But it was knife defense. And we have a rubber knife here. And the instructor, Professor Smith, said, put that knife back in the office and get the real one, which is rounded edge, but it's sharp, it'll cut you. And I'm pacing back and forth like I'm in my cage, and my son is over there, and I see him when Professor Smith says, put the knife back, get the real one. And I see my son cling to his mom a little bit. And I see that, and I walk over to him, and I say, I'm going to be okay. And he just goes, okay. And he's back to normal. Good. My son trusts me. But he trusts me on a couple one, I'm gonna protect myself. Two, I'm not gonna lie to them. There was another time when my mom came from Phoenix. My son was sitting on, Terry doesn't come to class very often. She just, this is not her deal. And I respect that, but, you know, she's seen me do some stuff, and she's seen enough to know that we're gonna be okay. My mom's here, hadn't seen me do anything. Mason's here, sitting on Terry's lap, and there's, the mat goes here, and there's a row of chairs right there. Well, we're doing street defense, and, you know, they start with the lower ranks, get to the high ranks, and they get to me, and they send out one attacker, they send out two, they send out three, and then they put a girl in my arms to represent my wife, who's sitting right over there, and same deal, if they touch her, I lose. So your adrenaline's built up. And all of a sudden, I go down the street, and there's 3 or 4 guys, I can't remember, there's a bunch. And I'm throwing her around like a rag doll, and I'm screaming, and I'm piling up bodies, and I'm hitting them hard. And these guys are going down, and I'm dragging her with me, and we're down the street, and I'm looking over my shoulder at the pile of bodies. No, we won. She's safe, and I'm walking down back to my spot on the wall, and my mother's got her hand over her mouth in shock, and my wife's eyes are as big as dollars. And my mom had never seen me do anything, so she's shocked. My wife hadn't seen me do things in a while, so I think she's a little amazed, which is fine. And I walk past, and my son's sitting on my wife's lap, and as I walk by, he goes, "Hi, Daddy." I go, "Hi, Bubba." I walked up to my instructor, and I said, "Sir, I'm done." He goes, "You okay?" I said, "Yes, sir." I said, I'm done. I need to be done if I can. Okay, off to the side. And it's kind of like when you see a little boy who's been around the screaming and the yelling and the banging, because we make some contact down here. This ain't church, we know that. That sees you just pile up 3 or 4 guys and looks at you and goes, "No big deal. Hi, Daddy." It's kind of like not letting the air out of the balloon, but popping it. And all the adrenaline was gone, and I had nothing left. It was almost funny to me. So, having that out of a small boy is basically saying, "That's just my dad. Good with him." So what was your question?
You answered it.
What was it?
It was that you've had a lot of support from home, and are they proud?
Never ever stopped me from coming to class, ever. Never stopped me from a tournament. Never stopped me from doing anything.
What's your relationship with Professor Smith like now?
Ooh. If you've ever had somebody that you're just extremely grateful to, extremely loyal to, there's very few people that you'll trust with 100% of everything you got. I trust them with my money, I trust them with my family, I trust them with everything. And there's not many people like that. So to have when my father died, this is where I came. Because it's the sanctuary. When there's been problems when Terry got sick, didn't tell a lot of people, told him. So having someone like that that's poured his heart and soul into you. There's respect, and then I don't think they have another word for the type of respect I have for him. And it's more than just because he's a teacher. You know, he's been there for everything. And that's important. And that's what you need. And that's a hard one to put a label on. So, would I, he's family. I'm the only white guy in a family picture of theirs. So he treats me like family. I don't know. You know, when you, how do you put somebody in a category that says, look, if something happens to me, you have two things. Pick my pallbearers and train my son. Wow. What a good deal. Anyway, I just don't know. I don't think I've had a relationship like that, like this. And I don't think there's a version for it. I don't think there's a word for it. I know he has this same relationship with his instructor. He called one day and said he needed me. And I'm down in Payne, I'm 40 miles away, and I drop what I'm doing, I come up. And I think maybe I got somebody here that needs to fight or whatever. Needed to pick up a car in Chicago. No problem. I call home, going to be a little late. But that is what he would do for me. And it goes back to our earlier question. I just have to call and ask. He's in Texas this minute. But if I call him and say, I need you back here, he'll be back here. The next flight. The way he drives, he'd probably beat the plane. But he also knows, but I trust him with, when he was in Bloomington, Earl Suzanne's up there, Cassandra was up there. I call him. He'll drop what he's doing. He'll get there until they can be safe. His mom's here. If he calls me and I'm in the middle of the biggest presentation ever, I'm dropping what I'm doing and I'm going to take care of his mom. And it's not because I owe him. It's just what you do. So there's not a word for it. And it's hard to tell him because he'll brush it off. Maybe I'll sum it up like this. One day he was doing a seminar here. And I'm in street clothes, and I'm standing next to him. And he's demonstrating power and a technique. And I'm standing there, and he throws a punch at my head, right at my ear, that I can feel the wind in my ear. And he does it more than once. And he comes back and does it again, demonstrating. Somebody asked me, how can you just stand there? And I think my answer was twofold. I said, one, I'm a Christian. If I die, I know where I'm going. And if he hits me, I'm dead. So I'm going to be okay. If he doesn't hit me, I'm going to be okay. If I move, I'm not where he thinks I am. And if he makes adjustments, then he may hit me. So, do I trust somebody that has the power to throw a punch as hard as they can at my head, knowing that if he misses, it will kill me? Do I trust him that much? And the answer is yes. He is that good, but I still trust him. That's a hard one, but it wasn't hard to stand there. And until you can experience something like that, trust somebody that way, I don't know how you can label it. So if he ever watches this, I love him like a brother. And I talked earlier, there's certain things you die for. Wouldn't be much of it. All you gotta do is ask.